When Zagan, a formidable sorcerer, ventures into an auction for the possessions of the deceased archdemon, he anticipates uncovering potent relics. Yet, amidst the array of items, he is captivated by the presence of Nephilia, a rare white-haired elf being auctioned as a slave. Zagan impulsively spends his entire fortune to acquire her by an immediate and undisclosed attraction. However, Zagan faces a challenge. He struggles with social interactions and expressing his emotions. Will he be able to overcome his social issues and express his love for Nephilia? The story begins with a soldier named Myers assaulting a girl. She demands to know why, only to discover that the soldier is actually a sorcerer in disguise. Using his knife, the sorcerer tears the girl's clothes and mentions something about a living virgin's face being important. Before the sorcerer can do more harm, a man named Zagan sneaks up from behind and grabs him. Zagan, the owner of the garden, demands to know why the sorcerer is causing trouble. Realizing he's in Zagan's territory, the sorcerer offers his research data in exchange for his freedom. Zagan refuses, stating he won't tolerate sorcery that involves harming others, and promptly dispatches the sorcerer. Witnessing the violence, the girl faints, and Zagan worries he may have gone too far. He restores everything to how it was, hoping the girl will think it was all a dream. Noticing a cross necklace on the girl, Zagan realizes she's associated with the church, enemies of sorcerers. Despite saving her, Zagan knows he'll likely be blamed for the attack but decides he doesn't care. He attempts to teleport the girl to safety, but someone's magic interferes with his spell. Zagan suspects it's the work of Barbaros and wonders if he's interrupted something. Zagan explains that he was just dealing with a troublemaker in his yard, and Barbaros notices the girl lying nearby has a good amount of mana. Barbaros wonders if Zagan plans to use her for a ritual sacrifice, but Zagan assures him that's not his style, and promptly teleports the girl away. Barbaros expresses disappointment, suggesting Zagan should have let him have the girl if he wasn't going to use her. Zagan brushes off the comment, saying he doesn't have time for such nonsense and needs to go to bed after staying up late reading sorcery books. As Zagan tries to leave, Barbaros stops him, suggesting he could wake up by tweaking his brain with adrenaline. Zagan retorts that such sorcery is what caused Barbaros to have his messed up appearance. Barbaros defends body manipulation as basic sorcery to maintain health and longevity, although they still have a limit of about 1,000 years. Changing the subject, Barbaros reveals that one of the archdemons named Marcosius is dead, sharing interesting news with Zagan. Zagan is surprised to hear this news, explaining that becoming an archdemon grants immense mana and authority over lesser sorcerers. Archdemons are considered the top of the sorcery hierarchy, and out of the 13 archdemons, the one who lived for 1,000 years recently passed away. Barbaros mentions a significant auction happening in Marcosius's territory, where the late archdemons' belongings will be up for sale. The scene shifts to Zagan heading to Marcosius's territory with Barbaros, realizing that Barbaros only informed him about the auction because he wants to borrow money. Barbaros suggests he might buy the legacy himself, but Zagan finds it unfair. Barbaros argues that Zagan is the only one who would lend him money, and if he does, he'll help him meet some nice girls. Zagan brushes off the idea, saying women cause more trouble than they're worth, and notices the city guards acting nervously. Barbaros explains that the city is tense due to a series of kidnapping, with some foolish people snatching women for sorcery experiment. Zagan finds this dangerous, noting it's akin to provoking the church. Barbaros speculates they might be attempting to summon a real demon, though Zagan considers it mere folklore. Descending underground for the auction, Barbaros reveals that Zagan is under suspicion for the kidnapping. Zagan denies involvement, stating he has no interest in such dark sorcery. Barbaros remarks that orchestrating the kidnappings would be beyond Zagan's capability, as he lacks the necessary allies. Arriving at the auction, Barbaros introduces the prominent figures present, including Valefor the Apparition, Gremory the Enchantress, and Chimerus the Black Blade. Zagan explains that these second names are like titles for sorcerers. Barbaros informs Zagan that they are candidates to become the 13th archdemon, now that old Marcosius is gone, and he himself is one of the candidates. Zagan wonders who decides the 13th archdemon, and Barbaros explains it's determined by the remaining 12 archdemons. Gremory also notices Barbaros, known as the Purgatory, and Zagan, and she questions why Zagan, who is young and lacks a title, is among the archdemon candidates. The auctioneer then presents their final item, explaining it was meant for Archdemon Marcosius, but was left behind after his passing. They reveal it's an elf from the distant northern Holy Land. Zagan is surprised to see the silver-haired elf, and the auctioneer emphasizes the elf's closeness to gods and natural spirits, making her magical properties highly valuable. Bidding starts at 10,000, and Zagan immediately bids 1 million for the elf, stunning everyone. Zagan is captivated by the elf's beauty and desires to help her, make her smile, and touch her. He feels like he's found something unexpected and approaches the stage. Feeling socially awkward, Zagan wonders what to say to the elf and questions why she's chained. The host explains the collar contains her mana, preventing her from escaping. Zagan expresses a desire to talk to her and hear her voice, unintentionally giving the auction attendees the wrong impression. The scene shifts to Zagan in his castle with the girl, feeling unsure about what to do next after bringing her home. He knows he'll have to talk to her eventually, and runs through different conversation scenarios in his head, but none seem right. The elf then asks if she can ask a question, and Zagan finds her voice sweet. He encourages her to ask, and she wonders how she'll be killed, hoping to prepare herself. Zagan reassures her he won't harm her, but noticing the equipment in his room, she fears something worse than death. Zagan explains the equipment belonged to the castle's previous owner, and he has no interest in torture. He struggles to ask for her name, but before he can, the girl introduces herself as Nephilia. Zagan finds her name beautiful and asks about her family name. Nephilia says she doesn't have one and suggests he call her Nephi. Zagan thinks her nickname is cute and asks if it's common for elves not to have family names. Nephilia explains that it's unusual, revealing she's a cursed child. She shows Zagan her undergarments, saying she's a virgin to reassure him, but he asks her to stop. Nephilia thought Zagan was worried she'd be used for experiments, but he assures he won't do that. She questions why he bought her, but Zagan evades, feeling embarrassed about his feelings for her. Despite his excitement about living together, he wants to maintain his dignity. Zagan offers her a room, asking her preferences. Nephilia jokingly wonders if he's asking where she wants to die, but Zagan reassures he won't harm her. He realizes Nephilia may have been sold as a slave and lied to about being a test subject or sacrifice. She doesn't want to discuss it and likely has no home. Zagan empathizes, sharing he didn't have a last name, grew up in the slums, and was called Yagan. He sees a connection between them. Zagan then explains to Nephilia that he bought her because he needed her, urging her not to speak of dying anymore. Nephilia is surprised by his words, but Zagan reassures her that from now on, she will live for his sake. She understands and follows him as he takes her to her room. Thinking she deserves a nice view, Zagan asks if she's afraid of heights. Nephilia replies that she isn't, so Zagan leads her to a room on the upper floors. While climbing the stairs, Nephilia stumbles, but Zagan catches her, reminding her to be careful. Feeling embarrassed, he continues holding her hand as they ascend. Upon reaching the topmost room, Zagan opens the door, only to quickly close it upon seeing a guillotine inside. Nephilia then suggests to Zagan that he can take her head if he wants to, but Zagan explains that the guillotine is just a trap to protect the castle from airborne enemies. He promises to get rid of it and uses his magic to remove everything from the room. Although the room is now uninhabitable, Zagan believes Nephilia shouldn't be scared anymore. However, Nephilia appears to be afraid of Zagan after witnessing his power. Zagan agrees that the room now feels gloomy, so Nephilia goes to the balcony. As she gazes at the moon, Zagan asks if she likes it. Nephilia replies that she doesn't know and wonders if it's okay for her to stay in this room. Zagan reassures her that it's fine as long as she doesn't mind the mess, and Nephilia says it's okay because this is the room her master prepared for her. Grateful, she thanks Zagan, surprising him as he hasn't been thanked in a long time. Nephilia adds that she hasn't thanked anyone in a long time either. Zagan sits wearily on his throne, visibly exhausted from a sleepless night. He couldn't rest because he allowed Nephilia to sleep nearby, concerned about the condition of her room. His thoughts were consumed by her, preventing him from finding any rest. Despite his desires, he refrained from making any advances, prioritizing Nephilia's comfort over his own urges. Suddenly, his stomach rumbles, signaling his hunger. He decides to fetch himself a morning snack. Shortly after he leaves, Nephilia awakens and tidies her blanket. Returning with a kettle in hand, Zagan notices her awake and greets her masterfully. This catches him off guard, unsure of how to respond to a simple good morning greeting. He debates internally whether to reciprocate or say something else, ultimately opting to inform her of the food he brought, albeit feeling disappointed in his inability to respond naturally. Nephilia and Zagan sit together in the hallway, enjoying their breakfast. Zagan eats absent-mindedly, pondering his recent struggle with communication. Nephilia, noticing they have the same meal, questions if it's usual. She expresses gratitude for being fed but finds it odd they're eating identical dishes. Zagan wonders if their meal of jerky and milk is too plain for breakfast. Nephilia explains that it's a meal typically served to slaves, which surprises Zagan. He realizes it's not a nutritious choice, noting Nephilia's concerned expression. He interprets her worry as fearing for his well-being. Although he acknowledges his breakfast isn't healthy, it's a habit from childhood he never questioned, bringing back nostalgic memories of its sour taste. Curious about human cuisine, Zagan's inquiry brings a smile to Nephilia's face. She offers to cook for him, admitting she's learned by imitation. Zagan is astonished by her culinary skills and regrets his past focus solely on sorcery. Excited by the prospect of Nephilia cooking for him, he suggests making a homemade meal together, to which Nephilia eagerly agrees. Deciding to shop for ingredients, Zagan flags down a passing coach in the forest. The driver quotes them a fare of 3 bronze coins for their destination. Zagan recalls that he's completely out of money after spending everything to win over his new bride. He decides to take a walk, realizing it's a cost-free activity. Nephilia is surprised by his sudden decision, but follows along, having no other option. As they stroll, Zagan realizes he's penniless and ponders how to replenish his funds. He considers selling some castle equipment but lacks the funds to pay for transportation. He briefly entertains the idea of robbing the coach driver, but dismisses it, not wanting to tarnish Nephilia's opinion of him. Another idea crosses his mind, selling the entire castle to start a restaurant with Nephilia, but his thoughts are interrupted by a commotion behind them. Turning around, Zagan sees the coach driver being accosted by bandits demanding his belongings. Recognizing them as mere thieves, not sorcerers, Zagan notices Nephilia trembling slightly. Concerned, he asks her what's wrong, but she insists she's fine. Suddenly, he realizes this situation mirrors how Nephilia was kidnapped before. With this in mind, he instructs Nephilia to observe him closely. Pointing his finger, he conjures a bolt of lightning, startling the bandits and averting the threat. Zagan grabs the attention of the bandits, who recognize him as a sorcerer and question his presence in the forest. Despite some uncertainty, they decide to attack him, banking on the belief that sorcerers need breaks between spells. Seizing the moment, they charge at Zagan, prompting him to shield Nephilia behind him to demonstrate her safety. The bandit leader swings his axe at Zagan, but to no avail. Zagan effortlessly stops the axe in its tracks, surprising the boss with his strength. Astonished that the bandit relies solely on force against a sorcerer, Zagan effortlessly dismantles the axe and sends the boss flying with a flick of his hand. As the bandits call for reinforcement from a sorcerer, one appears, astonished to see Zagan aiding others, a rarity among sorcerers. Zagan deduces that the bandits hired the sorcerer, who warns him of impending regret. The sorcerer conjures a fiery magic circle, but Zagan quickly dispels it, revealing its illusionary nature. The sorcerer attempts another spell, only to find Zagan has commandeered his magic circle. Zagan retaliates, using the circle to incinerate the sorcerer. Turning to the bandits, he encourages them to fight, but they flee in terror. Noticing Nephilia's disapproving expression, Zagan tries to reassure her of their safety, but she remains wary, citing the bandits' attack on the coach. Grateful passengers gather around Zagan, thanking him for saving them. The coach driver invites him to accompany them, offering payment for his protection. Zagan accepts the payment from the grateful passengers, surprised at how easily he acquired it. He briefly entertains the idea of making a fortune by defeating villains, but dismisses it upon realizing that sorcerers like him are often seen as villains themselves. Despite this, he appreciates the money, as he's previously fought against wrongdoers without receiving thanks. The passengers also praise Nephilia, associating her presence with Zagan's heroism. They hitch a ride on the coach, prompting Nephilia to ask Zagan why he helped the passengers. He explains that it was an unintentional way to reassure her about robbers. Wanting to impress Nephilia, he tries to sound cool by mentioning putting arrogant individuals in their place. But Nephilia's reaction leaves him questioning his choice of words. Unbeknownst to Zagan, Nephilia smiles at his attempt. Arriving at the street market, Zagan decides to buy necessities for Nephilia, pondering what she might need. Spotting a clothing shop, he takes Nephilia inside, where the store owner, Manuela, greets him with hesitation due to his sorcerer status. Zagan introduces Nephilia and instructs Manuela to assist her in finding suitable clothing. Manuela is impressed by Nephilia's beauty but notices the collar around her neck. Choosing to overlook it, she assures Zagan that she'll find something nice for Nephilia. Leading Nephilia away, Zagan feels uneasy about the collar's visibility but recalls the auctioneer's explanation for its necessity. Manuela returns with Nephilia wearing a revealing outfit and asks for Zagan's opinion. Embarrassed, Nephilia walks out, prompting Zagan to scold Manuela for the choice. However, Manuela defends herself, explaining that she was trying to cater to Zagan's preference. Feeling uncomfortable, Nephilia asks Zagan to stop looking at her. Zagan instructs Manuela to find Nephilia more suitable attire, and she complies, suggesting a traditional maid outfit. After Nephilia tries it on, Manuela highlights its quality, and the added comfort features of the boots. Zagan turns to Nephilia for her opinion, but she expresses her readiness to accept whatever is offered to her. Concerned that Manuela might choose another embarrassing outfit, Zagan advises Nephilia to quickly agree to the maid outfit. They leave the shop, and Manuela expresses gratitude for their patronage, noting Nephilia's fortunate situation with a caring master, which surprises Nephilia. Zagan then informs Nephilia that they will visit a blacksmith shop. Inside, the blacksmith inquires about Zagan's needs. Zagan requests the removal of Nephilia's collar, surprising her. He explains that she no longer needs it, as its presence reminds her of being the Archdemon's property. The blacksmith explains that he cannot remove the collar because it's enchanted beyond his expertise. Additionally, attempting to remove it improperly could endanger Nephilia's life due to the trap within the collar. He advises Zagan to use the collar's original key for safe removal. Zagan understands that the key to Nephilia's collar must be at the late Archdemon's castle since no one possessed it at the auction. He offers the blacksmith payment for the advice, but the blacksmith refuses, citing a past favor Zagan did for him. The blacksmith recalls how Zagan saved him and his daughter during a previous year when their coach was attacked, even though they fled in fear. Zagan takes back his coins, and the blacksmith insists Zagan visit if he ever needs help. As they leave the shop, Zagan feels unsettled by the sudden kindness of others towards him. He notices the positive impact Nephilia has on people just by being near him. Finishing their shopping, Zagan realizes the day is ending. Deciding not to burden Nephilia with cooking after a long day, he takes her out for dinner. During dinner, Nephilia asks if Zagan plans to remove her collar. Zagan confirms he intends to do so, but Nephilia questions if he's concerned she might run away when it's off. Zagan understands that Nephilia might want to run away once he removes her collar, but he explains to her that he can't do it yet, so she shouldn't expect it to happen soon. He criticizes himself for not being upfront about his intentions, even if she decides to leave. Observing Nephilia struggling with her food, Zagan wonders if she's unfamiliar with using a fork. She admits it's her first time eating in this manner. Zagan reflects on why Nephilia captured his attention initially. He sees in her someone who, like him before gaining power, is trying to navigate a world where they feel out of place. Encouraging her to eat freely, Zagan assures her that the meal will be more enjoyable than the plain breakfast jerky. Nephilia attempts to pick up a berry with her fork but struggles. Switching to a spoon, she successfully eats it and finds it delicious. Zagan tries to use his fork but fails, prompting Nephilia to offer him a berry with her spoon. Despite internal moral considerations, Zagan decides to set them aside and eats from her spoon. He compliments the taste of the berry, but both feel too embarrassed to make eye contact. Nephilia notices that Zagan doesn't give her explicit instructions, so she asks if she can assist him in any way she sees fit. Zagan agrees, and he offers her a berry from his plate using his fork. They both feel embarrassed when other diners chuckle at their interaction. As they exit the restaurant, Zagan feels content with their master-servant dynamic. Meanwhile, Chastel, the woman Zagan rescued, is revealed to be a knight. Lost in thought, she ponders why a sorcerer would come to her aid. Suddenly, Lord Clavewell enters the room and praises Chastel for thwarting the kidnappers along the roads. He informs her that there's more to be done because they've discovered that the culprit behind the kidnappings is Zagan. Shocked, Chastel denies this accusation. But Lord Clavewell insists that even if mistaken, Zagan must be apprehended solely for being a sorcerer. He emphasizes that sorcerers are inherently wicked and must be brought to justice. As Nephilia pours Zagan some tea, his eyes catch her ears wiggling slightly, and he wonders if it's a sign of her happiness with his compliments. Settling down for breakfast, Zagan asks if Nephilia has eaten yet. She admits she hasn't, prompting Zagan to suggest they eat together. Surprised, Nephilia explains she only prepared enough for him, leaving Zagan wondering if she intended to skip breakfast. Realizing she forgot to prepare for herself, Nephilia hesitates, but Zagan insists on sharing his meal. He invites her to sit at the table, but she protests, having only set up one seat. Zagan suggests she sits on his lap, assuring her it's acceptable. Despite feeling embarrassed, Nephilia complies with his request. Zagan is taken aback by her obedience, but proceeds to feed her. Nephilia finds sitting on his lap uncomfortable but doesn't resist. Zagan encourages her to remember to prepare a seat for herself next time, to which she agrees. However, he reassures her that he doesn't mind if she sits on his lap again. Accepting his words, Nephilia serves him some soup, prompting Zagan to suspect she's teasing him. Nonetheless, he tastes the soup, finding it warm and delicious, a sentiment echoed by Nephilia. A few days later, Zagan is perched on a ladder, engrossed in reading books in the library. Nephilia enters, curious about what he's always studying. Surprised by her question, Zagan realizes she doesn't recognize that he's studying sorcery. She explains that she wasn't sure about the purpose of the intricate drawings in the books. Zagan ponders if elven sorcery differs from what he studied, but Nephilia confesses she can't wield sorcery. This surprises Zagan, considering Nephilia's high mana quality. Drawing a symbol, Zagan explains that similar symbols hold specific powers, though their meanings are debated. Some believe they represent the language of gods, while others see them as marks of pacts with demons. Uncertain of the truth, Zagan sketches a blueprint for a basic sorcery formation called a sorceress circle. He demonstrates by channeling mana into it, creating small bolts of lightning. This, he explains, is the simplest sorcery form, with potency enhanced by adding symbols to the circle. Zagan further elaborates that aspects like direction, range, and timing can be controlled, showcasing a larger lightning bolt erupting from the circle. Startled, Nephilia receives Zagan's apology for surprising her. He explains that anyone can utilize a sorcerer's circle by channeling mana into it. Zagan adds that while sorcerers can hijack another's circle, there are restrictions in place. He mentions that the structure of the magic circle is referred to as a circuit. Observing Nephilia's thoughtful expression, Zagan inquires about her thoughts. She points out that he's only added symbols outside the circle, and wonders if it's possible to include something within it. Impressed by her insight, Zagan explains that it's both impossible and possible. He elucidates that creating another circle inside a complete one could either prevent activation or disrupt it. However, with precise mana flow control, it could be achievable. Nephilia queries if it's feasible to override someone else's sorcery, to which Zagan affirms, stating it could defend against various sorceress attacks. He notes the theoretical potential for the most powerful sorcery, but acknowledges the complexity involved. Despite the possibility, he remarks that serious sorcery studies are rare, although some dabble with the idea. Nephilia expresses her grasp of sorceress theory and ponders if anyone can use it once they understand it. Zagan acknowledges her potential knack for sorcery, emphasizing the direct link between knowledge and power for sorcerers. He cautions her about traps set around sorcery books to deter theft and assures her he has adjusted them to avoid triggering them. Initially frightened, Nephilia realizes Zagan is teasing her, which makes her happy. Surprised by their lengthy conversation, she questions Zagan's intentions with his extraordinary power. Observing her curiosity, Zagan admits he's never contemplated such matters before. He candidly shares his past struggles, recounting his survival instincts and eventual pursuit of strength after being captured by a sorcerer. Zagan recounts his resolve to avoid being sacrificed and his aspiration for immortality. However, Nephilia expresses doubt in her ability to attain such strength. As Zagan prepares to reassure her, he senses that one of his traps has been triggered. Chassel arrives at his castle accompanied by a group of soldiers. Zagan informs Nephilia of their guests and instructs her to prepare dinner for just the two of them since the visitors will soon depart. He heads out to greet them while Nephilia tends to the meal. Meanwhile, the soldiers find themselves trapped in a circular movement pattern, realizing they are ensnared within a sorcerer's barrier. Chassel, recognizing the situation, attempts to break the barrier with her sword. However, Zagan swiftly intervenes, appearing at the gate and fatally striking her down. Though Chassel recognizes Zagan, he fails to remember her, initially perplexed by her possession of a sacred sword, one of the legendary weapons known for vanquishing evil. Recalling his previous encounter with her, Zagan regrets his actions but proceeds with his plans, indicating he has other matters to attend to. With a surge of lightning, he incapacitates Chassel and her companions. As one of the knights deflects his blow, Zagan is taken aback to see his shield scratch, despite his efforts to hold back. The knights urge Chassel to leave Zagan to them, but when one charges at Zagan, he swiftly incapacitates him with a powerful punch. Zagan contemplates whether they will retreat now or if they expect Chassel to carry all three of them back home. Ignoring Chastel's command to withdraw, another knight launches an attack at Zagan. Zagan effortlessly disarms him, knocking him to the ground with a flick. Stepping on his fallen opponent's face, Zagan warns Chassel not to provoke him further, or her knight will pay the price. Chassel, reluctantly dropping her sword, questions Zagan's intent to humiliate them despite his victory. Zagan explains his motive is to instill fear, hoping they will spread word of their defeat rather than becoming mere casualties. However, Chassel sees through his facade, surprising Zagan as he refrained from taking their lives to avoid distressing Nephilia. Seizing the opportunity, Chassel strikes at him, slicing through his magical barrier with her powerful sword. Realizing the strength of her weapon, Zagan evades her attacks, pondering why such a petite figure wields such a formidable sword. Despite Chastel's persistence, Zagan refrains from retaliating, admitting his reluctance to harm women. Chassel challenges Zagan's allegiance to sorcery, condemning its very existence for causing widespread suffering. Zagan points out Chastel's own role in using her abilities to eliminate sorcerers who could have helped others, implying she shares responsibility. This fuels Chastel's determination not to be defeated by Zagan. She attempts to strike him with her sword, but Zagan intercepts the blade. They then engage in a contest of strength, during which Chastel demonstrates her superior power, leaving Zagan to realize she had been holding back. Recognizing his disadvantage, Zagan opts to end the confrontation. However, Chastel surprises him by suggesting he feign defeat to avoid drawing the attention of a stronger magic knight. She urges him to abandon his life as a sorcerer and live peacefully. Zagan is incredulous but moved by her unexpected offer, recalling her recognition of his mercy during their encounter and his past act of saving her life. Aware of the risks she faces in making such a proposition, as aiding a sorcerer is a grave offense for knights, Zagan grapples with his decision. Ultimately, he concludes that fleeing is not an option, as it would jeopardize Nephilia's safety. As Nephilia emerges from the castle, one of the knights defies Chastel's orders and attacks her with a spear. In a desperate bid to protect Nephilia, Zagan rushes to her aid, resulting in the spear piercing his hand. Enraged by the attack on Zagan, Nephilia taps into her power, manipulating the forest's surroundings. Despite Zagan's plea to refrain from harming the knights, Nephilia's actions render them helpless, much to Zagan's concern for their well-being. Zagan is astonished by Nephilia's extraordinary power. Following Chastel's apology for involving an innocent bystander in their conflict, the knights retreat to the castle. Seizing the opportunity, Zagan inquires about Nephilia's abilities. She clarifies that what she demonstrated wasn't sorcery, prompting Zagan to delve deeper out of his admiration for her. Curious, he asks if she felt afraid during the display of her power. Nephilia is taken aback by Zagan's lack of unease and explains that her abilities stem from mysticism. Zagan is taken by surprise, as mysticism allows one to access powers beyond natural law merely by wishing it. He ponders whether all elves possess such capability, but Nephilia discloses that her use of mysticism is due to a curse. She reveals that such powers shouldn't exist because individuals with white hair, like herself, are not supposed to be born. Zagan discerns her emotional distress and listens as she recounts a traumatic experience from her past. Nephilia recalls an attack on her elven village, during which she was urged to defend it in exchange for being spared. Overwhelmed by the responsibility, she surrendered herself while others attempted to flee. Witnessing the capture of those who fled, she experienced a twisted sense of satisfaction, questioning her sanity for deriving joy from their demise. Zagan realizes the source of her reserved demeanor and offers reassurance. Contrary to her fears, he doesn't view her as a horrible person and accepts her for who she is. Zagan expresses to Nephilia that if he had been in her situation, he would have retaliated against the attackers and possibly the entire village. Nephilia confesses her fear of not being forgiven by the villagers, but Zagan advises her not to concern herself with those who have passed away. He encourages her to embrace her ability and live a fulfilling life, emphasizing that neglecting her strength would be a disservice to those less fortunate. Recalling an encounter with a girl he once rescued from bandits, Zagan reflects on her privileged upbringing, which he believes made her weak. Determined not to follow the same path, he resolved to strive for strength. Assuring Nephilia of her importance to him, Zagan reminds her of his need for her presence. Moved by his words, Nephilia questions if she truly has the right to peacefully coexist with him. Zagan reassures her, expressing his inability to imagine life without her. Touched, Nephilia becomes emotional, prompting Zagan to offer his support and comfort. Afterwards, she apologizes to him for her undignified display, and Zagan tells her not to worry about it. Nephilia then asks him if his hands are okay, and Zagan notices that they are no longer hurting. He removes the bandages and discovers that his wounds are gone. He wonders if Nephilia is behind this, and she confirms it. Zagan can't believe that his hands healed just by touching her, realizing it must be the power of mysticism. He expresses his gratitude, and Nephilia mentions it's the first time he's thanked her. Zagan is surprised he hadn't thanked Nephilia before and apologizes for it. She reassures him it's fine, as he is supposed to be her master. The scene shifts to Zagan trying to sleep at night, and Nephilia comes to him, asking if he'd like to sleep with her. He wonders if she means what he thinks, and Nephilia explains the castle only has one bed, and he always sleeps in that chair. She thought he'd rest better if he laid down. Zagan realizes she just wants them to sleep together and nothing more. He appreciates her concern but explains the importance of him being in the room as it's the anchor point of his barriers, crucial in case anything happens. Nephilia explains that she thought Zagan might need some rest, so she offers her lap as a pillow. Zagan finds it tempting and ultimately succumbs, resting on Nephilia's lap. He considers it amazing and asks her why she's doing this. Nephilia mentions that Jogon previously told her she could stay, even after he learned about her mysticism, so she wanted to express her gratitude. Jogon reassures her she doesn't need to thank him, as she's already doing a great job. He then asks if she's interested in learning sorcery. Nephilia wonders if she'd be capable, and Jogon notes that he observed her lack of control over her mysticism today. He's unsure if learning sorcery will help her control her powers better, but believes it could at least aid in self-defense. Nephilia is uncertain about her ability to use sorcery, but Jogon assures her she'll likely excel at it. She wonders if this would make her more useful to Jogon, who insists she's already a great help. Nephilia then asks if she could protect him with sorcery, and Jogon reminds her that she already shielded him from the angelic knights. Nephilia declares her intent to learn sorcery to assist Jogon, who reflects that he would have preferred if she did it for herself but accepts her decision. He then appoints Nephilia as his apprentice, realizing he never considered having one before. Nephilia recalls Jogon's earlier words about using power if they have it, realizing it may have been difficult for him despite his stoic demeanor. She hugs Jogon, expressing that he's not a bad person and acknowledging his kindness despite his reserved nature, which moves Jogon to tears. He hopes for more moments like this. The scene shifts to Barbados visiting Jogon, surprised he's unharmed after the attack by the angelic knights. Jogon dismisses them as weak, but Barbados mentions rumors of one wielding a sacred sword. Jogon confirms this, acknowledging the strength of the maiden with the sacred sword, who managed to damage some of his barriers around the castle. Nephilia then serves Barbados some tea, and he's surprised to see that the elf Jogon bought is still alive. He wonders why Jogon hasn't sacrificed her and asks if he's keeping her alive as long as she satisfies him. Jogon clarifies that this isn't the case and introduces Nephilia as his apprentice. Barbados is taken aback that Jogon has taken an apprentice, but Jogon explains that there are sorceries he can't manage alone, and Nephilia will be helpful with that. Barbados thinks having an elf on his side makes Jogon unbeatable in sorcery, and approves of the idea. Jogon dislikes Barbados' objectification of Nephilia, and Barbados questions if she helped Jogon chase off the angelic knights. Jogon confirms she aided him, and Barbados assumes she caused the chaos outside. He then inquires if Jogon is vying for one of the Archdemon's seats, suspecting it's for the authority it brings, which would deter threats against Nephilia. Jogon admits he's after the seat but doubts he'll be chosen soon since he's only been studying sorcery for a decade, unlike others with centuries of experience. He acknowledges his lack of knowledge compared to them, but believes as long as he survives, he'll eventually have the opportunity to claim a vacant seat. Jogon then praises the tea and snacks that Nephilia made, and Barbados questions if he's grown fond of her. Jogon explains it's natural to value one's apprentice, and finds it convenient to refer to Nephilia as such. Barbados remarks that Jogon still retains some humanity, and takes his leave. Later, Jogon wonders why Barbados visited, and Nephilia asks if they're friends. Jogon clarifies they're not, but Nephilia notes Barbados seemed to enjoy their conversation. Jogon doubts Barbados' enjoyment and thinks Nephilia might be mistaken. He then repairs the barriers damaged by the angelic knights, teaching Nephilia the basics of sorcery. Jogon works hard on Nephilia's sorcery lessons, and she assists in castle duties while learning. He finds solace in not being alone and notices Nephilia gradually expressing herself more, though her mysticism remains unruly. A month later, a strange bird breaks the castle's barrier, delivering an invitation from the 12 Archdemons. Surprised by their summons, Jogon attends the gathering at the lair of Archdemon Marcosius beneath the Canoid's trading hub. He wonders what they seek from him as he meets the 12, who notice his youthfulness, making him the youngest chosen one. Jogon feels the weight of their presence, almost nauseating, yet he restrains himself. He dares to question if they've summoned him merely for observation, contemplating leaving. The Archdemons rebuke his audacity, declaring him their 13th comrade, an Archdemon. They reveal the Archdemon brand left by Marcoja, explaining it as the emblem of their authority. Sensing dense mana from the emblem, Jogon also perceives similar energy from the other Archdemons. He grasps that being an Archdemon transcends mere title. Their overwhelming power explains why ordinary sorcerers falter against them. Jogon remains silent, prompting the Archdemons to inquire if anything displeases him. Expressing disbelief in his selection, Jogon questions why he was chosen when stronger sorcerers exist. The Archdemons dismiss his concerns, affirming his significance despite his perceived insignificance. Recalling his victory over Andres the Accursed as a child, Jogon reflects on how he acquired knowledge despite his tender age. They clarify that Jogon grasped his sorcery and its intricacies effortlessly, enabling him to develop entirely unique spells. The archdemons assert that none can hinder him if he chooses to absorb power from others or to slay, as none would withstand his might. Should he desire, others would have no recourse but to yield their sorcery to him, a despotic authority befitting an archdemon. They predict he will ascend to become history's greatest sorcerer, hence their immediate elevation of him to an archdemon. Yagan suggests he could absorb their power too, but the archdemons scoff at the notion. One among them claims he could, but they could extract far more from him than he could ever from them. This brings Yagan's mind to Nephilia, and the archdemons clarify that their fury is not merely about destruction, it's about obliterating all that he holds dear. They emphasize that this is the essence of their kind and what he will inevitably become. He understands this, reflecting that since he was compelled into sorcery, a normal life was never an option. He explains that a sorcerer's ultimate fate is either obscurity or transformation into entities like them. He refuses to drag Nephilia into this darkness, setting a condition for accepting their offer. After revealing his condition and receiving their agreement, Yagan embraces the emblem and earns his second name from the archdemons. The scene shifts to Yagan's return to Nephilia, who has prepared lamb stew. Sensing his solemn demeanor, she inquires if something has occurred. Yagan realizes there's no turning back. However, Nephilia can still lead a regular life. He shares that he has become an archdemon, and despite the weight of his decision, Nephilia congratulates him. Jargon reveals that he has acquired all of Marcosius' possessions as part of his newfound status, and then he removes Nephilia's collar. He informs her that he no longer requires her services now that he's become an archdemon. The scene transitions to Nephilia awakening in a town, bewildered about her whereabouts. Recollecting that she was preparing lamb stew for Jargon, she contemplates returning to the castle. However, upon noticing her broken collar, she recalls that her master has cast her aside. Reflecting on the time spent with him, she's surprised by her lack of tears despite the recent event. This brings an end to our episode. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.